This podcast is a product of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. Nothing in this podcast should be considered legal advice. To find a collaborative professional near you, visit www.collaborativepracticeflorida.com. Thank you. I'm Catherine Eaton, a member of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. And on today's podcast, our guest is Lana Stern. Lana is a licensed psychologist, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator, and an FACP accredited family law facilitator. She is an active, enthusiastic proponent of the collaborative process, and she's worked extensively on family law cases as a MHP facilitator, and she's going to tell us what that means. And she's written an article, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. And I bet you she's going to tell us a little bit about that too. So welcome, Lana, to the podcast. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to start off with a question that I ask all of our guests. How did you get involved with the collaborative process?
This is a long story and it goes back very, very far. I don't know if they still have the required 4-hour course for parents that are divorcing.
They do.
They do. Okay.
They do. And usually people take it online now. I remember when it was live and when I got divorced umpteen years ago, you had to get in the car and drive and sit in a room with a bunch of people.
Well, I was with a group of 2 or 3 other people and we were offering the course privately. So I was marketing the private course, one-on-one or one-on-two. And so I met a lot of the family attorneys. One of the attorneys that I spoke to was Rosemary Roth. And in about 2006 or 2007, she attended a class and she learned about collaborative law, collaborative process. We called it collaborative law back then. Anyway, she gathered about 10 people together, 10 attorneys, and she invited me to come to a presentation. I liked the idea because I was working with families and individuals who had been the children of divorce and were still sort of scarred, or the families that were divorcing. There was so much parent alienation that it really bothered me. So this was a concept that I liked. So I joined the group. It wasn't called the Collaborative Family Law Institute. I think it was. I think that was the original name, but FACP was not called that. It was called something else back in the day. And so Rosemary began dragging me to some events, law events up in Orlando. Like we would meet secretly in the room after a meeting was over and talk about collaborative law to try to get more people in the state involved. Anyway, to make a very long story short, collaborative law took off. And they decided to put neutrals in the process, but they didn't quite know what to do with us, and we didn't know what to do either. The training at that time was by Rosemary and another person, and it was about 3 hours. And they sort of threw you into a case. The very, very first case I had, I got a call from the attorneys and they said, please come to my office. And I did. I walked in the office and there was a very angry couple sitting like this, glaring at each other. And the attorney said, oh, the mental health person is here. And they left. Now, that was the beginning of the neutrals role. This must have been about 2008. Anyway, to make a very long story short, we got some training. People came in to train us. And I remember at the training, they trained us at that point separately. There was a room for the mental health people, a room for the attorneys, and a room for the financial people. I had never been through a divorce. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant. I don't have a clue about the divorce process. But we kept trying different variations. We did try the 2-coach model. That didn't work very well. We just kept working and attempting to use the neutrals in the process. Rosemary was the president and gathered quite a few people in Miami to join the group. And then other counties in Florida also became part of collaborative. And we went to different meetings and, talked a lot about collaborative process until people began to think, we like this. So the training that I had left me wondering, I didn't really understand the process of what collaborative was. So Rosemary and I decided to write a training. At the time, Rosemary had just retired. She was the president for probably about 7 or 8 years. Bob was the president then of our group in Miami. And he said, write a training. So Rosemary and I spent months writing a training. And I had been originally a guidance counselor in Dade County schools when they first introduced sex education, or they called it human growth and development. And the idea was keeping all the kids together and presenting a program. So I said to Rosemary, why don't we keep everyone together and teach everyone the same thing all at once? Because I said I didn't understand the whole process, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that didn't.
And
So
it's
we
supposed to be a
decided,
team approach. So, I mean,
well,
thank
it didn't
goodness.
start off in terms of training us initially as a team, and team has evolved. So we wrote a training, and then maybe it's just me because I like to have a lot of fun and things should be not so serious and so whatever. We decided to make a story. The first day that a client walks into the very, very end, and everything else that could possibly go wrong in the story. So we created a training that started from when the client walks in till they sign the agreement at the end, and every other thing that could possibly happen that could be funny and so forth. So anyway, that was a training. So we had a training group, Florida Collaborative Trainers, and we probably trained, at that time we were the only training group. So we trained everyone in Florida. We did many, many, many trainings, and I think very successfully at the time. Then COVID hit, and we only did in-person trainings. And so then I think a lot of the other training groups that do online trainings came in. My training wasn't exactly compatible with online training. Too many bells and whistles and people coming in and all sorts of things happening that were both fun and interesting, but led to a lot of interaction with the people that were there in person. So that's my story of collaborative. So I've been doing collaborative for the longest time, probably since about 2008, I think was probably the first time I did it, a case. And we changed our name many times. We were at the time mental health professionals, but people, as you know, are not comfortable with mental health. So we became a variety of things. We didn't want coach because some coach are not licensed. So we don't want to be coaches. So we ended up with facilitator or collaborative facilitator, which I think most people are happy with. And
And so
that's
now, when you are a collaborative facilitator, explain what you do and what's your role in the collaborative process.
well, as collaborative evolved, remember the neutrals had a hard time sort of getting in. The attorneys were always used to, by training, to speak for their clients, to take charge, to take control of the process. So now we've talked about the paradigm shift a million times. Well, the paradigm shift was working as a team. And I think it was very difficult in the beginning for attorneys to really understand the concept. And of course, we didn't know either as the neutrals, as the financial and the mental health neutrals, we didn't exactly know what we were supposed to do either. And so it took some time before we really understood the team approach, which meant that the attorneys really had to give up some of their power. They weren't in charge. They weren't the ones that spoke for the clients. It was the clients that spoke. And that the people that sort of managed the process were the neutrals, the mental health and the financial, depending on what the focus was. If it was a family issue, it was more the facilitator, or if it was an emotional issue, the facilitator took a lead, or if it was was really a financial case, the financial person, but everybody worked together. It was very open and everything was shared together. There was no positioning. That's where the interest-based negotiations came in rather than the positional. The article that I wrote that you referred to, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, really details how difficult that shift has been for all of us, not just the attorneys. It's most difficult for the attorneys because their training is to be positional in a way, get the best for their clients, speak for their clients. Don't say it, I'll talk to the judge, you know. So this was a huge change for them. For the mental health people, we're sort of the listeners. We listen and, we talk about communication, but we don't take the lead. But in this case, we did. We had to. We had to be part of the process to take the lead or to even be the push to make sure that things were going forward. And the financial person had probably less of a shift, except now they were representing both of the clients, not just one. And as the team began to understand all of that, that's when you have this incredible process that we call collaborative process. So that's where we are today. We've really come a long way. And it's been such a thrill to see the development of a team. And when a team works beautifully, we model the right kind of communication for the couple. There's a sense of safety and trust. And even the most difficult cases, and they are difficult, can be resolved because of the good negotiations that go on that are not positional.
You just touched on something. I think that most people who've heard about collaborative but haven't been involved think it's for cases, some people say the kumbaya case, or they think it's for cases that are easily resolved because it's a team approach and everyone gets along and that it's just some glamorized mediation. But will you touch a little bit about how it's really the more complex matters that collaborative can really be so helpful versus going to court? Can you explain that how collaborative isn't just the easy cases and it really is for more complex and harder cases?
I don't know. I haven't had that many easy cases, to be quite honest with you. These are not easy cases, and a lot of them are extremely lived financially. And so the financial people really sometimes there's businesses involved, there's trust, it can be very, very complicated financially and emotionally. This is a divorce. People that are getting divorced are getting divorced because they don't get along for some reason. And so the emotional aspect of two people trying to separate their finances and their children and their life. And then there's all the red herrings that go along with a divorce case. There could be an affair, there could be depression, there could be, I've probably seen it all in the cases, and they are absolutely positively not easy kumbaya cases. And the wolf in sheep's clothing aspect is that sometimes the attorneys can regress into the litigation head of thinking, and that can complicate a case also. When when the case begins to turn a little on the litigious side by bringing in case studies, or legal case studies, by attorneys getting positional or withholding some information because this is their training and they're sort of going against their training by being collaborative and working together as a team. So there are many, many complications that can make a case difficult. I'm really waiting for that kumbaya, easy case to come along. Please keep in mind if you have one of those, love to be involved in one of those cases.
So explain to everyone listening when the lawyers go bad, where they forget all of their collaborative training, they go back to their old strategies, and they're really the ones in the way. And of course, the clients say, well, you know, my lawyer's just looking after me. How do you keep those lawyers in line?
Well, it's difficult, and that's why we try to gel as a team from day one. We have our pre-meeting, which is basically a way, if there's a new person involved, to talk a little about who we are, to make it more social, to talk about what our expectations are. Like I like to say, I want to be involved in everything. I want to know what's going on. If I don't know what the financial issues are, or if I don't know what the um, issues are that a client talks to the attorney about, if I don't know those things, there's absolutely nothing that I can do to intervene. And so right from the get-go, before the case even begins, everyone talks about their experience, their expectations, and we talk literally about how we're going to take notes and what about emails and how are we going to share information and are you comfortable with feedback? Because after every meeting that we have, every joint meeting, we always have a feedback session with the team so that we can talk about, I felt uncomfortable when this happened, or how did the clients feel, or how did you feel when the client said this, and so forth. And so we're really sort of doing a check and balance each time. But I think it's mostly that we have to gel as a team. And it's the responsibility, really, I think, of the facilitator and the other neutral, the financial person, to sometimes maybe remind the attorneys we're not litigating the case, or maybe to say, gee, that felt so much like a litigated statement. I wonder if we could just, redo that one or go back and change that particular thing. I mean, no one is perfect, and we're not being critical to a person, but we do want to give feedback because we want this to be, I guess, lawyering, I can't say that word, at the highest level. We want collaborative to be law at the highest level. And that would be, um, I guess, everyone working as a team, sharing information, and really trying to negotiate so that the interest of the family is dealt with and to the best of our ability.
When you say interests of the family, that's such a like a generic big umbrella. Can you explain a little bit about what the interests are and how it really differs with each family? Because we say the interest of the family. Well, the interest is that that the finances are separated and figured out, that their kids are fine. But can you talk a little bit more how each family has such different interests?
Sure, I'd like to do that. We always talk about trying to find the goals and then the interest of each family. I try to explain it when I speak to the families, what it is that we're looking for. Um, the goal, of course, is to have a civil and respectful divorce so that the family can remain a family. Maybe their organization is a little different, and maybe the family structure looks a little different. But we want to be able to give a family the opportunity to still be a family, which means attend activities, be able to talk to each other, for children to feel safe and loved in both homes, wherever that or however that may turn out in terms of configuration. So by finding the interest of people, we're much more able to settle negotiations because everyone does have a different interest. For example, there was a case that the family was fighting over the house. And both of the husband and the wife wanted the house. They wanted that house. They were fighting over that house. So I really tried to find out what the real interests were, what's behind the goal of wanting the house. The wife wanted the house because she wanted continuity for the children. But the husband had a very different reason. The wife had an affair, and the husband was very angry and did not want the man, that she was having an affair with to live in the house that he built. And he absolutely wanted the house just so that that would not happen. Once we understood that, we were able to resolve the case. The wife was able to um, buy something else. She decided that she could be okay living in a condo nearby with her children, and the husband could retain the house. And that's the way that the case was settled, because he did retain the house, and she did move into a condo, coincidentally, where the person that she was having the affair with also lived. So it actually worked out well for her, for everyone. But until we understood the real motivation behind the goal of the house, we weren't able to solve it. We went back and forth a million times. So sometimes the goal is not always obvious, or the interests are not always obvious. I always talk about interest being uh, take a lemon, and in litigation, you take a lemon and you cut it in half, and the husband gets half and the wife gets the other half, and that's the case. In collaborative, we find things about the wife. The wife makes the lemon meringue pie. The husband makes lemonade. So the husband gets the juice to make the lemonade. The wife gets the zest to make the lemon meringue pie, and they split the pulp. And that's what collaborative does. And those are the interests. We find out what each person wants or needs for their particular family. And like you said, it's a matter that we deal with. Does that
Thank
help?
you. That helps. That's an excellent explanation, and I'm going to use your
Metaphor.
your lemon lemonade
Yeah.
zest pie example. I think that's really great. So thank you for sharing. Lana, when if somebody is considering getting a divorce and they just want to get some more information and they're not ready to get lawyer up, how can they reach you and find you to have a consult?
I do consults all the time, and I'm happy to do a consult with the couple, with the individual. But if they happen to be my therapy patients, I cannot, of course, be the facilitator. But yes, they can contact me, make an appointment. I'm certainly happy to share. I know collaborative in and out and all the ups and downs about it. It's a much better process than litigation. There's absolutely no reason why a family cannot stay together as a family, like I said, with a different organization. It isn't exactly going to look like the original family, but it can still be a family nevertheless. And they can still be civil and attend and love their children in the future. They do not need to hate each other, fight, take everything for one and punish the other. It doesn't have to be that way at all. So I'm happy to tell anybody and explain the mechanics of a collaborative divorce.
Thank you. Thank you for being our guest today.
Well, thank you for having me. And anyone can approach me and ask me about collaborative. I'm happy to discuss it. Okay. Thank you.